Hello and welcome to your new topic of work, which is sticking with development but looking more at the UK economy. So this is still paper 2. It's building on what you've just done for section A, which was development and the development gap, but now looking at the changing economic world. Section C will be about economic growth, and that'll be in Nigeria and NE. But you'll notice that this is economic change in the UK. So it's not about how our economy is growing, it's about how our economy is growing. In terms of the main ideas, it is basically around how our economy has changed, how that affects regions and employment patterns, and how that continues to change going forwards. There's a range of different things that we're going to be looking at, but we're going to look at things like deindustrialization, and you should have a concept of that in your local community. We've got mining that has closed down, which is what we call our traditional industrial base. Moving towards a post-industrial economy. This is the move from manufacturing and mining and things like that into more IT and service industries. Looking at how industry and the economy can have an impact on the environment. So we're going to look at how we can make things more environmentally sustainable. We're going to look at rural areas as well, because we need to remember that rural areas still have economies. And we're going to look at one area of rural growth and one area of decline, and how the population growth and decline has an impact on the economies there. How new developments in road, rail, infrastructure, ports, airport capacities has an impact. And in that, we'll look at HS2, and it's been in the news recently. People again saying, is it worth it? And that's going to be something we look at. We're going to look at something called the North-South divide too. And this is how the southern part of the UK has got a very different economic structure and some very different statistics around the economy compared to the north, and how we can try and narrow that gap between the north and the south. And then look at the place of the UK in the wider world. This is an ever-changing thing. You'll see that part of it is about looking at the European Union. And as you'll know, at the moment, Brexit is very much on the agenda, and we'll have to think about how that has an impact. So it's a really interesting unit. It's about the world that you're growing into and the world that you'll end up working in. So the first thing we're going to look at is, what is globalisation and how has it affected the UK economy? There's quite a bit here to do. And through this little video, I'm going to tell you to pause at different points. I'm going to ask you some additional questions that you can use to help your thinking. But mainly, most of it can be completed in the book. It might be worth having a scrap piece of paper as well. And you might want to pause it and go and have a chat with people in your house or the people that are around you to see what they think. Because as adults, we've grown through this change of the UK economy, and things are very different now to when probably your mums and dads, uncles and aunts started working however many years ago that is. So I want you to, at the end of this, I want you to know what globalisation is and the impact it has and how this has happened over time. And there are going to be a couple of questions for you to do. So you'll see at the bottom, your outcomes are based around the marks that you'll get. And this will be the feedback that we'll start with next week. So, firstly, a little bit of explanation. We categorise jobs in the UK, or the global economy even, using 4 categories. We call them primary industry, first, secondary industry, second, tertiary industry, tertiary means third, and quaternary, meaning fourth, quaternary industry. Primary industry are what you think of as old traditional jobs, extraction of raw materials from the ground like mining or fishing or farming. That's primary industry. Secondary industry is the manufacture. So it's taking those things that we produce from primary industry and turning them into goods that we might buy. So it might be you might have mined some metals and they've been used now and manufactured to make cars. That's the secondary industry. The tertiary industry is very much about offering services. Doesn't make anything, doesn't mine anything, but it offers a service. And there's a whole range of jobs that fit into this sector. That could be working in a call centre, it could be a teacher, it could be a policeman, it could be a doctor, it could be a cleaner. They all provide a service. And the quaternary industry, the fourth one, is a newer kind of industry. This is research into technology and science and space and medicine and pharmaceuticals. It's all that kind of research. It doesn't necessarily add up that you get paid more as you go through the sectors, so that's something to be aware of. But what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video, and I want you to think about, or go and speak to, if you can, a number of adults that you know, and think about the jobs that they do and which sector they might fall into, and see what the pattern is. So pause me now and come back to me when you've done that. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you've done that task, and you might start to see a trend. You might have asked, what did they used to do? What do they do now? And you might start to notice some of those changes. And it links to this first question you're going to have a go at. This is the changing industrial structure of England and Wales, and it's a lovely little question to start the unit with because it says describe. Remember, describe, you don't actually have to know anything. You just have to use the information that's there, and there's a lot of it. So describe the changes in the UK economy using figure 20.14 marks. You can see on there that there's primary and there's secondary and there's tertiary, and then we'll see from about 1980 onwards we've got that little yellow line which is quaternary. And I'm going to give you 4 minutes. You can pause the video and have a go at answering this question. Have a go. Okay, welcome back again. In terms of just giving yourself a bit of self-assessment for this, what I'd like you to do is just think about the 4 marks that you could have got. Ideally, what you will have done is you'll have talked about all 4 of those different sectors of the economy, and you'll have used data in each point. So you might have wanted to talk about how tertiary is now the highest at 80%, whereas it used to be in 1841, it was below 40%. You say how secondary has declined. It's declined rapidly since 1961 through to 2011. And less than 10% of people will now work in sort of manufacturing. Agriculture's been low and got lower, so over time. And then we've got the rise of the quaternary sector. Give yourself a mark for each one of the sectors you spoke about, and only if you've backed it up with data. If you've not used any data, so any numbers or statistics or dates, so you've got years and you've got the percentages, then you limit yourself to a maximum of 2. Give yourself your mark now. Okay. So if we know that these changes have happened, we now make it a little more difficult, and we say explain. Why has this happened? It's an interesting question. And at this point, I don't expect you to know the reasons why, but what you should have noticed is around about 1960, there has been significant changes. We've seen the growth of the service sector and the decline of the secondary sector, which are the 2 biggest changes we've seen. And the word that I've used there is globalization. You might not be aware of what that is. So before we can answer that question, let's have a think. Globalization is something that has affected all of us. And you'll see from the image on the left-hand side that there are a number of things that lead to this process happening. Globalization is how we're all a lot more connected. It's about how countries are more connected and people are more connected and businesses are more connected around the globe. This is due to a number of things. Firstly, the falling costs of communication. We can talk to people. If you even think about how we're doing lessons at the moment, or this form of doing lessons, this is how we can use technology better. So we can use technology to stream. I'm sure many of us have used technology, things like Skype and emails and more things to communicate. Well, if we can use those things, we can talk to people in different parts of the world at the same time. We don't have to travel to get there. It makes things quicker. Also, that information transmission, that's about talking about broadband, quicker emails, quicker meetings and things like that. Where we do have to travel, we now can do it really fast. Even if we have to physically travel, we've got jet passenger aircrafts, whereas if we go back to the 1950s or before that, it was steamships and steam trains. And there's the famous story of the England cricket team that took 3 months to get from England to play Australia to play the Ashes, and that was a 3-month journey. We can now do that in 24 to 30 hours. You'll see from the cartoon it's got globalization. That's a bit of an indication about who this might benefit. You'll see there are people that seem to be doing quite well out of it, and people that don't seem to be doing quite so well. They're clinging on at the bottom of the earth. Also, you'll see a brand that I'm sure all of you probably either own or at least know, and that's Nike. And Nike are a good example of how globalization's had an impact. They are a TNC, and you've looked at TNCs already. You looked at examples of TNCs, Coca-Cola, when you did your first piece of work. Nike are another example of a TNC, a transnational corporation. They have their offices in Hicks, so they will be in America. But actually, if you own a Nike product, look at where it's made. It won't be made in a Hick. It will probably be made in a knee. Vietnam or Thailand are places where these products are made. China, India, those kind of places. So globalization is the increasing links between different countries throughout the world and the greater interdependence that results from this. And when we say interdependence, we mean the relationship between two or more countries. So globalization means that countries can work closer together, and with this it brings advantages and disadvantages. What I want you to bear in mind is I want you to understand how globalization, the world being more connected, has had an impact on our economic activity, the sectors that we work in. So, to do this, have a think. Pause me in a second. How has globalization impacted you? If you're looking for some ideas, have a look at the products that you've got. Where's your phone made? Where's your clothes made? Where are your trainers made? What foods do you eat? What programs do you watch? Which musicians are you listening to? What social media do you use? How do you communicate? All these different things. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Make a list, scrap piece of paper, as many different ways that globalization has impacted you. Pause me, come back to me shortly. Okay, welcome back. And hopefully you've got a wide range of different ways that globalisation has impacted you. Take another minute, pause me shortly. How do you think this then affects the UK economy? Think about, I'll give you a clue. Think about the trainers that you wear, or the bag that you've got, or the blazer that I'm sure you've still got on, and think about where that is made. Think about the TV that you watch. Where was that made? Well, all those products have to be made, so they'll be in the secondary sector. Where are most secondary sector jobs now, then? And why has that then had an impact on our economy? Pause the video, come back to me shortly. Okay, hopefully you've had quite a good think. This infographic here gives you a little bit more information. So we can start to think about how this has impacted our economy and our structure. You can see things like less manufacturing, so less secondary sector. That's because we now import goods, especially from China, meaning fewer goods are made in the UK. We do this because it's cheaper to do that, and it means that jobs are lost. So we don't make the products that we used to make. We outsource jobs. This is where we send jobs overseas for lower work, lower wages, things like that. So jobs that we would have traditionally done in the UK, we outsource them. The mines that are in your local community, well, we no longer mine our own coal. We can import coal cheaper than we can mine it in our own country. So those jobs have closed down. Where jobs are closed down, though, we need to replace them with something else. And we've replaced those with, initially, service sector jobs, and more recently, those quaternary sector jobs. We've got higher investment in the UK, more ideas, more technology. These provide jobs for workers in the UK. We are a HIC, so we've got a very intelligent workforce. You all get an education, whether that be to secondary school level or you go on to university, but we've got people that have got the ideas that can do these things. So your task here is to look at that and have a think about if you can now explain how globalization has impacted the UK economy. Effectively, if you're struggling with this, it's about saying, why is the secondary sector closed down or slowed down or become less, and the tertiary and the quaternary sector increased? Pause me, have a go, come back to me. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully you've got a bit of an idea. And the key point here is that it's the outsourcing of jobs. So globalization has meant we're more connected, which means that we can get jobs done somewhere else cheaper, which means that actually our economy changes. And that's the main idea. So if we go back to this, we can see that if we were to try to explain it, we could argue that maybe the globalization process really happened from about the 60s onwards. We see that we have the decline in manufacturing, but a significant increase in services. We can also see around about 1980 that knowledge sector, that quaternary sector, really start to grow. And we can see that this might be because this is the point where communication got easier, transport got quicker, technology improved, so that actually we can get our products somewhere else made and shipped over to trade, but just as quickly. There's no slowness in that. So now to your big task. I've given you lots of bits of AO1 about the impacts of globalization, and I want you to turn them into AO2. So AO1, remember, is knowledge, things that you know. I've given you that knowledge, and now I want you to explain it and explain how it impacts the UK economy and the UK economic structure. Extend each comment with this means that or this shows that to link to how it changes the UK economy. This should take you 16 things, 16 or so minutes. Do as many as you can. Remember, if there is anything that you're really struggling on, move on, come back, think about it at a later time. You don't have to get everything right first time. It's something that you can come back on. So pause me, take as long as you need to complete this task. Okay. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you've developed all that AO2. Some of you, without being prompted, may well have double developed some of those points. And that's great. And it's really brilliant if you can show your understanding. And what I'd like you to do is to think about whether you do now get the idea of what globalization is and how it's affected the UK economy. If you're still really struggling, go talk to people around you. They might not know the terms, but they'll have understood what has happened to the UK economy and probably some of the reasons why. I'm sure they'll be really interested to see what you've been doing in your geography. So to finish this week, there is a little bit of exam practice for you to do. I've got a little way of you showing your understanding. So describe the changes to the industrial structure shown in figure 7. Nice figure. It's a describe question. You know how to do this. And then it's about suggesting the reasons. This is about you articulating and putting down what you've learned today. For next week, I'll give you some feedback on these in the video lesson as your feedback, and we'll go on to our next objective. Until then, take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Take care, folks.